Hello Global Warriors, my name is Morten. I'm the lead designer of Historical Board Gaming's Global War 1936 version 4, and in this video I will present my design philosophy to give you a glance of what's going on behind the scenes and some of the things that you can look forward to in the very soon to be released version 4. Before we begin, it's a good idea to think about where we are in the grand scheme of things. And if we look at the realm of World War II board gaming, we have Global War sits in what I call the sweet spot between the realm of Axis and Allies and the realm of the hexagon-based games. In this, I define this sweet spot on the axis of complexity and time to play, as experienced players are able to play the game without using the rulebook. Of course, there will be some player aids. And for the time to play on the other axis, it can be played start to finish in a weekend. Now, doing any changes, we risk moving out of the sweet spot. So this is important to keep in mind when we evaluate new things. As a designer, when I look at Global War, I look at hundreds of components, hundreds and hundreds of elements that all combined makes the game. Some of these elements work great, some of them are broken, and some are in between. My focus for doing version 4 has been to look at all these components, all these elements. The most natural thing for doing a next version of a game is adding more stuff. So let's add more units, let's add more concepts, let's add more complexity. But like in the kitchen, adding more ingredients to the soup doesn't necessarily make a better soup. It's often counterproductive. And so is it also with board gaming. At least that's my opinion. So examining all these components, all these elements, we've worked a lot with identifying what needs work. So here are just some examples of things. Is something ever used in the game? Is the rules unclear? Does the game, after a lot of time, does it show that there's a certain winning strategy? Are there balance adjustments needed? So this has been one of my key areas, identifying all these elements that needs work. And you can see here that going from version 3 to version 4, the overall picture is a lot greener. Now, you might also notice that version 4 is a bit bigger, elements-wise. And that's because by eliminating all the problem areas, by fixing all the issues, we've actually been able to squeeze a bit more in, some new things, and still keep Global War in the sweet spot. So let's take some examples. Let's, for example, look at Spain. Now in version 3, Spain could be this. So there are a couple of components in the game that combined gives you the Spain theater. If we look at the Spain, again, it's just an example here. After a lot of games, there's a certain strategy that tends to be, this is usually how it's played. And perhaps there are some options available, but it's not very adaptive. It's typically the same thing that happens over and over again. And this tells me that there are some issues here. So for version 4, things typically look like this. So by fixing stuff, by tweaking stuff, we've actually been able to, so now there are more good options available to players. And this gives a much more fun game to play, and it also brings longevity to the game. And Spain is just an example. There are hundreds of these theaters of war components, elements that you can draw these maps for, and then examine, well, what's the current state of affairs, and are are great players always doing the same thing. And it could be that, for example, in Spain, a small adjustment to the setup is actually enough to produce a change reaction that leads to more options for players. When I've looked at what to focus on, I've worked with this list of priorities. So first, and most importantly, is fixing broken elements or eliminating unnecessary complexity. And as you can see on the right, it's turning yellow and red into green areas. After that, my priority has been what small enhancements can we do that doesn't add complexity, but brings more fun to the game. And then lastly is, are there any potential great new concepts and ideas that would really take the game to the next level? One thing to remember is that global war with all these elements are only as strong as its weakest link. And it doesn't take a lot of red squares to make the game mediocre. We all have games in our collections that are unplayable because they're broken. And so fixing all these things and doing these things help to ensure that global war is the strongest possible chain for version 4. I have 6 core design values I live by, and I will go through each of them now. First and foremost, to me, playtesting is king. There is simply no substitute for doing a lot of playtesting. You might have a great idea, someone else perhaps thinks it's a good idea, some might say it's a stupid idea, but unless you test it, you'll never know. We've had some great ideas and concepts on the drawing board. Everyone was totally stoked about it. We thought they were great, but then we tried it out in real life and it turned out to be utterly garbage. So number 1 is playtesting is king. Number 2 is complexity is evil. A lot of version 4 has been streamlining and polishing to remove complexity. The game is big enough as it is, and complexity not only slows the game down, but it also is a hindrance of bringing new players on board. So as complexity is evil, we've worked a lot with removing it, and you will notice a lot of tweaks in this area. Number 3 is playability trumps realism. This is not a simulation of World War II. If it were, I would like to play the US, that's for sure. So we've made some tweaks, and we have adapted some things to make the game more playable. Some people, they are more into the realism camp, but it's always a dilemma and a fine line of balance. But I think we've in a pretty good place for the next version. Number 4 is I work from a 4I principle. And that means I never do anything alone. I always ping pong with my co-designer Matthias, and we talk about this game daily. And whenever I do something, he's always on board. And this actually enables me to do number 5, and that means that is failing quickly. So fail fast is a phrase I stole from other software development, where you want to fail fast because failing is not a problem as long as you're able to quickly recover. And the cheapest way of failing is doing it fast. So for example, an example of failing slow is I design a game, I write the rules to the game, I release the game, you play the game, and you figure out that it sucks. That is failing slow. Failing fast is, there's an idea, let's test it, see if it works, let's try to break it. Let's do that 10 times over and see if if it floats or sinks. So failing fast is also an important value for me. Number 6 is never personal. So some designers, they tend to marry their ideas. I try to stay neutral, and if something doesn't work or is broken or needs to be improved, it's not about me. The person giving me the feedback is just want to help me and make a better game. So it's also an important value for me is that I don't take things personal. Now the bottleneck for designing a game and for designing V4, you might ask, what's that? Is it new ideas? The thing is, there are hundreds of World War II games. Everyone has ideas. The internet is overflowing with ideas. Forums, social media, YouTube. There's ideas bonanza everywhere. So why don't we just take those ideas and make it into version 4 and be done with it? Well, the thing is that doesn't work, because the bottleneck is actually test capacity. So at any given time when we do playtesting, we're testing several things at the same time. So there will be big changes, there will be small changes, there will be fixes, but we have to manage, or I have to manage, this test pipeline to ensure that we don't test too many things at once. And you can see the red boxes represents things that we tested, but there has been some playtests where we did too many new things at once, so everything fell apart. And this has been a very, very difficult thing for me to manage this pipeline. Now, throughout the testing period, we have discarded a lot of ideas, a lot of concepts, and the best ones we have then moved forward with and played with over and over and over again. So you might ask, well, that's not a problem. Just increase your test capacity then, to get more test capacity. Then you can do more testing, and you can get more new stuff into the game. Well, in theory, you're right, but not all playtesting is created equal. I typically look at the 2 categories of playtesting. So level 1 playtesting is that I get some feedback from people who have played the game, but I have not been participating in the game. So some of the feedback that I might get is something is not right, or we don't understand this rule. Now this is good feedback. I can use it, but I can only take it so far. Level 2 feedback, or level 2 playtesting, is actually if one from the core design team is present in the game, with all players in the game being good to great. That gives feedback and playtesting on a whole different level. Because then we are able to ask the questions and answer them. Is this strategy simply too good? Do we need to tweak the balance here? And to make a great game, you need level 2 playtesting. And that's actually very, very hard to come by. I'm very fortunate to have a group playtesting V4, where everyone in the group is good to great players. This is how it typically looks like from the core design team. We are part of several play groups, and we always make sure that at least one of us is participating in each game, so we're able to track and ask questions about why did you do this, or have you thought about this. If we look at the 3 playtest groups over time and see, well, so how much testing can be done? A group can typically do 4 games a year. Everyone has busy schedules, careers, families, other interests. So typically we can do 4 games a year, sometimes 5, but that's about it. So if we add up what can be done in the course of a year, we get around 12 playtests. more or less. I mentioned earlier that it was important to have one from the core design team participating in the playtests. And this is an explanation of why that is mandatory to get level 2 feedback. If we look at the game, we have a lot of different theaters. In all these theaters, we have the balance between opponents. Sometimes there's 2 opponents, and in other theaters there are more opponents. But in all these theaters, you have the balance shifting back and forth. If we introduce a new thing, a new concept that we need to test, some of these things typically interfere with multiple theaters. So we have multiple theaters in play during the playtests. And if we, for example, tweak, it could be the naval warfare system, introduce new things. Of course, the Pacific will be heavily affected, but so will other areas of the game. And not only, and for example, let's go with the example of the Pacific. So let's say that we make an adjustment to naval warfare, a big change, and so that actually fills up the test capacity for the Pacific theater. Because if we added more stuff to test that interfered with the Pacific theater, we wouldn't know which of the new things that was being tested was actually causing the issues. So that's one problem. But the biggest problem is actually, well, what happens if you have a play group where one or more players are inexperienced, or they're simply poor players. Let's have an example here where we have a new player playing Russia. That player comes from, for example, Axis and Allies, where he's used to being defensive, and he's used to bulking up, turtling up in Moscow. So he plays a very defensive game. This means that in the theaters, especially in Europe, but also in Asia, or you can also say perhaps in the Middle East, there's no pressure coming from the Soviets. So that actually means that, well, now the German player, as he doesn't have any pressure coming from the Soviets, he's able to really mess up the British, or really go crazy in Africa or whatever he wants. So in this example, I can't use the balance for anything, because I don't know if it's a problem with the thing that's being tested, or if the issue is that, well, the issue is the Russian player who's not playing very good, so that shifts the balance for the whole game. So let's look at the last 3 years. So version 4 has been under development for more than 3 years now, and the 3 play groups have played along, and so we have actually played almost 40 games so far. And over that time period, we have tested a lot of stuff. So it's now 2022, and what's the status? Well, every sentence in the rulebook has been utterly scrutinized. A lot has changed. We have done more than 40 playtests by the design team, and that means more balance than ever before. And we've got a ton of feedback from the community, and for that, I owe you a big thank you. The feedback we got from you guys has been very, very valuable, and without that feedback, version 4 would not be where it is today. And where is it today? Well, it's ready, and the rules will be made public available within a month or so. Look for it on HPT's website, and the official release will follow soon afterwards. So that's it for me for this video. I hope that it gave you some insights into what's going on behind the scenes, and I hope it gave you some insights to how I approach game design. And I hope you found the video enjoyable, and that you're stoked and can't wait to get your hands on version 4. The feedback that I have from the playtest groups, or that people are really excited about it. And I hope that you will be too. So stay tuned.